Yeah, they started in a garage, and they got venture capital money in 1999, and for the next 2 years they built a great search engine, but they had no way to generate any income. There was no ads, and so the venture capitalists became very impatient. They said, "What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And they came up with, in late 2001, a program called AdWords, which, when you do a Google search, a box appears on the right side, that gray box. Those are ads, little text ads. And the advertiser doesn't pay unless someone clicks on an ad. Those boxes now generate for Google, in advertising alone, $21 billion a year. That $21 billion is equal to all the consumer magazine advertising in the entire United States.
It's what used to be called the PI, per inquiry. You pay per inquiry.
Right.
But in their case, it seems to work.
You pay per click.
Now, so that means that Google bears little resemblance to the company that was originally founded.
It started as a search engine, and these two young 25, 24-year-old Stanford dropouts.
Did they have anything in common? One was a Russian emigre, wasn't it?
Sergey's a Russian immigrant. His parents, Jewish, decided to flee. They were scientists, to flee the former Soviet Union because they felt as Jews they could not get ahead. Larry Page was from the University of Michigan. His father was a professor there. Both mothers were also scientists. They meet at Stanford. They become fast friends. They decide to create Google, and what their idea was to make all the world's information available. Now, if you think of the Internet makes information available. What Google really does is it makes it accessible.
So did they come up with the idea of how to do it? I remember talking about how Microsoft began, and many of the ideas were borrowed from elsewhere. How much was theirs, and how much was borrowed?
Well, there were other search engines before Google. So in the sense of inventing the idea of search, it was not innovative. The way the search was done was innovative. However, they decided to not have ads on the home page. They decided, rather than try to trap the searcher in their portal, they would chase them off to the site they wanted to go. So they built trust on the part of users, and it was free, which also built trust. But then after a while, after they started to make money in late 2001 on advertising, they decided, we could be more than a search company. We could be a media company. And in fact, they said, well, why can't we digitize books? Why can't we have free telephone service for mobile phones? Why can't we sell advertising? Why can't we aggregate news? And suddenly they're in everyone's pocket.
Well, they're selling advertising in a way that advertising has been sold for a long time. Why is their approach perceived by the advertising industry as such a threat?
Well, because what Google wants to do is basically be your agent to sell advertising. And not just to post the ads from the companies, but actually to be the middleman.
Oh, so they don't just want to be the New York Times; they also want to be the person who places the ad with the
advertising agency. Yeah, and so advertising agencies feel very threatened by that. And when Google says we want to talk to clients, meaning we'll talk to Procter & Gamble, the advertising community feels very threatened by that.
Now, your subtitle, "The End of the World as We Know It," can be taken two ways. I'm sure you intended that. But in the positive sense, Google can represent something quite extraordinary, can't it? The end of an old world, an old way of doing things that they've improved upon.
Both are true. It's both good and bad news in that. The Google has made our lives much simpler. As you said, it's a verb. You Google something. I can sit.
We never say you Yahoo something.
Precisely. And I sit there, and the world is at my fingertips. I love that. Research, it's so easy. But also, if you live in a third world country and you can't afford textbooks, think about the value of Google search and that. So that's a wondrous thing. And the idea that you could read any publication online, or you can go to YouTube, which they own, and watch television programs. That is wonderful. On the other hand, if I can go online and read newspapers online, maybe I'm not buying a print newspaper anymore. And if I could watch television on YouTube for free, maybe I'm not watching it on cable. And so it disrupts entire industries.
Wasn't Google known for its idealism and putting the user first when it started?
It still is. I mean, I think in many ways the founders, the two co-founders, are 35 now. in many ways they remain a very idealistic company, and they bask in this glow of "Don't be evil," which is one of their slogans, and they mean not to do evil, but if you're in a traditional media company, you may feel they are doing evil to you.
Well, does not being evil mean that Google strives for a level of integrity other search engines and other media companies have lacked in the past?
Well, they do in some ways. I mean, for instance, a lot of search engines used to allow you to pay to have your name placed at the top. Google never allowed that to happen. A lot of search engine companies would have ads in their homepage. Google never allowed that to happen. So they've done some noble things, which I think has been a key part of their success. They built user trust.
And they've also billed themselves as an unconventional company. Well, what does that mean?
Well, they're a company that, for instance, when they went public and sold stock for the first time in 2004, they said, we're going to control, the way the New York Times or the Washington Post or Warren Buffett does, we're going to, even though we don't own a majority of the stock, Sergey and I, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, we're going to control a majority of the voting stock because we're not going to pay dividends. We're going to invest it in the company. We're going to think long term. We're not going to be like these Wall Street and these other companies who think just short term and maximizing profit. We're going to invest in what we believe in, and if you want to invest in our company and that belief, do it. If not, bye-bye. So they were very unconventional the way they did that.
Also the way they deal with their employees and the structure of the company and the importance of the engineering staff.
No, they give anyone who's an engineer, which is half the 20,000 employees, gets 20% of their time, a day a week roughly, to do any project of their choice. They are free to do that. So the engineers who work there, and they're some of the most brilliant engineers in the world, are emboldened to feel liberated and free. And a lot of the innovations that come out of Google News, for instance, comes out of the 20% time that those engineers have.
Does it help that Larry Page and Sergey Brin are engineers and computer scientists as well?
You know, I'm laughing as you say that, Leonard, because I would sit in. They would let me sit in their meetings, and I would sit in the meetings with Larry Page and Sergey Brin and Eric Schmidt, the CEO, and the engineers. And as I'm sitting there, I maybe understood half the words the people in that room spoke. It was like they were speaking Swahili. But as I sat there, I realized why a company like Yahoo fell behind in engineering. Because when Terry Semel, who did a lot of good things at Yahoo, he wasn't an engineer. He was me, and he couldn't give direction to those engineers. But these guys are computer scientists. They can't.